Yo, what's up? My name is Iron Petrowski, and I feel like now with over 2,000 hours on my Iron Man account, I finally feel competent enough to give you guys a proper Iron Man guide. Very quickly, for those who happen to not know, an Iron Man account within PokeMMO is a self-imposed challenge account, very similar to a Nuzlocke but with very different rules. It is inspired by the old school RuneScape account type, the account type where you cannot trade and cannot use the GTL. Everything on this account is self-sufficient and self-made. All Pokeyen must be earned through pure Pokeyen methods like paydaying, trainer reruns, or gym reruns. All shiny Pokemon must be hunted by thyself. And all legendary Pokemon must be either gathered in the wild through many hours of hunting or defeated in event raids. There are so many cool, unique aspects to the Iron Man account, and I have an entire video talking about why you should maybe consider creating an Iron Man account, as well as my full Iron Man journey and series, which will be linked in the description, which succinctly shows you guys all 2,000 hours of progress on the account. But I think if you clicked on this video, there's a decent chance you already know all of this. So let's go ahead and jump into 63 tips for Iron Man within PokeMMO. And as always, if you find today's video helpful, entertaining, or positive to your PokeMMO journey, make sure to consider liking it physically on YouTube and hitting the subscribe button for daily PokeMMO videos. Let's go ahead and jump into our list. Tip number 1 is a tough one. It's something that is already really important for main accounts, but even more drastically important for Iron Man. Tip number 1 is to get all of the regions done within PokeMMO ASAP. Yep, that's right. All 5 storylines, and that can be a lot. For a lot of people, that's their PokeMMO journey, and if that's where you end up enjoying the Iron Man account, that's awesome. Take your time and have fun. But for me, I think the Iron Man account really shines once you get all 5 storylines done, and they unlock access to all these different things. On a main account, it's very important to get 4 gym badges and then eventually complete your first region. This unlocks 2 things. The 4th gym badge obviously unlocks the GTL. That does not matter on the Iron Man account. And then getting your first region done allows you to XP train and EV train and have level 100 Pokemon. And you can buy whatever Pokemon you may want off of the GTL and go ahead and EV train and XP train and get started on all the best money making methods on a main account. You obviously cannot do this on an Iron Man account. If you want to start gym reruns, for example, on an Iron Man account, you're gonna have to go get yourself a Cyndaquil, Quilava, or Typhlosion. Well, these Pokemon only spawn in the Johto region. So to do something like beginner gym rerun teams, you have to have Johto done. But Johto is also, in my opinion, the hardest storyline region to do. If you want to farm some cheap 1x31 Pokemon in the Safari Zones, you could go to a region with a Safari Zone, aka Kanto, Sinnoh, or Johto. But then, if you don't get Hoenn done, well, then you don't get access to Smeargle, one of the most important catching Pokemon in the game, as well as access to Breloom and Shroomish, which also only spawn in Hoenn. You can get Smeargle at a few different locations, but Artisan Cave is going to be really important, so you can farm a ton of Smeargles very consistently. You can actually get, as you can see here, obviously Breloom over in Sinnoh, but that's at a lower spawn, and when you want a good IV Shroomish, you're going to want to catch a lot of them very quickly, and they're a much more common encounter over in Petalburg Woods. So there are little stipulations and little ways around some of these. Some Pokemon are truly only available in certain regions, like Cyndaquil and Quilava. But there are tons of things that are restricted to their own region within PokeMMO on an Iron Man account. Next up, Iron Man tip number 2 is that Pokeyen is actually much more valuable than we expected. When we first started the Iron Man account, it was expected that Pokeyen wouldn't actually be that big of a deal. Sure, you'll use it to buy Pokeballs and potions and certain things like that from the Pokemart, but surely you won't need as much Pokeyen as you would on a main account. This has been proven to be kind of false, but it depends on what style of account you want to play and what your activities are. For example, recently I've been preparing for Shiny Wars, and that requires a lot of Leppa berry farming. These cost about 300,000 Pokeyen a day to farm using the harvesting tools. If you do a catch event on an Iron Man account using quick balls or nest balls, which are often the best strategy, if you burn through 60 to 80 quick balls, well, that's going to be 60 to 90,000 Pokeyen within one catch event. And catch events are one of the best endgame activities on an Iron Man account, trying to win that illustrious free reward points, the best premium currency on the Iron Man account. I also burned through more things like repels and expert lures way faster than I expected. Also paying a bunch of Pokeyen for breathes. That is where probably most of your Pokeyen cost will come from as a mid-game to early game Iron Man account, and especially endgame, but usually you have even more things costing you more Pokeyen by endgame. But every single breed you see here costs 20,000 Poke-Yen because you have to buy the 2 braces, which are 10,000 Poke-Yen a piece. So every time you breed up to a 2x31 Pokemon, it's costing you a minimum of 20k. And then if you are breeding up to a 6x31 Pokemon, or potentially even a 5x31, something like my Alpha 6x31 Tyranitar, this is going to cost you usually around 32 breeders. So 32 times 10,000, even my math isn't that bad, thankfully, is 320,000 Poke-Yen, and that's just the Poke-Yen cost to breed this. Obviously, that is not even assuming all of the breeders you will have to go catch in the wild or through catch events passively. And often, sometimes you're going to want to pay for the gender on a specific breed, and that's going to cost you anywhere from 5 to 21,000 Poke-Yen pretty consistently each breed. Especially when I'm doing a bunch of these alpha breeds, you'll notice up here, I name a lot of them mate female or mate male, so I can keep track of things and make sure that they can actually continue a breed chain down the line. All of this adds up to Poke-Yen being more valuable than we expected on the Ironman account, and you're going to need more Poke-Yen than we thought. So make sure to get gym rerun teams and train rerun teams going ASAP. And next up, tip number 3 is going to be to start catching phenos as soon as possible. And shout out to Mighty Boxer's guide over on the forums, which perfectly explains phenos. If you don't know what they are, that will be linked in the description as well. Here's 4 different examples of phenos or phenomenas on screen if you're not familiar with what they look like. They are little random encounters of Pokemon that, more importantly, give you mysterious gems on an Ironman account, as well as help you complete your Pokedex. If you delay phenos until you're basically done your Pokedex, you're gonna have a bad time. The amount of people who have came to me and told me, Petrowski, I'm almost done my Pokedex, but hey, what is a special encounter? And then I have to tell them the bad news that special encounters are pheno-only encounter Pokemon like Audino, where you can only get them randomly from phenomenas. You do not want to be that guy who has the complete Pokedex but is waiting 2 to 3 to 4 weeks at times for a random pheno spawn. Make sure you start farming these as soon as possible to get the Pokedex entries, things like Audino, things like Ducklet. There's many Pokemon that are unique to phenos. I think things like Drillbur generally as well, but you can also get that through an event. It's nice to get these taken care of sooner rather than later. Now, on an Ironman account, you do also get mysterious gems. And mysterious gems, or mysterious gem clusters, actually, they've rebranded them, mysterious gem clusters, and these are how you get type gem items within PokeMMO, which are very, very powerful and really good for raids, PVM activity, and heck, even the storylines if you're stuck. If you don't know, the gems are these consumable items. You can make them by combining a mysterious gem cluster with any of the specific type items in the game. So, for example, if I combine one of these with a black glasses, that will create dark gems, which boost dark type moves by 50% for 1 attack. It is consumed after you do that. But you can see I have so many dark gems because these have actually been meta. Dark gems and ghost gems have been meta in certain raids and in PVM activities. I was using ghost gems recently during the Halloween event for the pumpkin boss. It's better to stock up on these gems whenever you can because obviously they're kind of out of your control. There's a fair bit of RNG to them. So make sure to potentially join my Discord and sign up for the Pheno role to get pinged whenever there are Phenos happening within PokeMMO. Then if you have your fill of Phenos, go ahead and unsubscribe from the Pheno role and leave the Discord if you want to. I'm a big advocate of use my Discord as a tool for your PokeMMO journey. You do not have to be there if you don't want to, but there are some awesome tools like the Alpha Ping and the Pheno Ping. Next up, tip number 4, and this one might seem obvious, and I used to recommend it a lot on a main account, but it's actually even more important these days on an Ironman account. Make sure to keep all 1x31 Pokemon. You can always use these as breeders, breed them up, and create better Pokemon down the line. By keeping a bunch of these 1x31 Roselias, you could eventually turn them into something like this 5x31 hidden ability access Fungus. I'll probably bring this up in a later tip, but this does become one of the biggest Ironman problems actually is box space. And once you reach late game and keeping all of these breeders. I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes dedicated to breeders, and that's actually on the low end for me. Usually it's about 7 to 8 boxes, but I've been trying to cut down in preparations for Shiny War. Breeding on the Ironman is also very different from a main account. It becomes a lot like solving a puzzle. On a main account, you're looking for the best profit, you're looking through the GTL to find the perfect fit. On an Ironman account, you don't have the perfect fit. You're trying to find the best fit that you possibly can. To show you an example of how I would start or do a breed on an Ironman account, I would go ahead and pick a Pokemon that I wanted to breed, maybe this Lilligant to keep it a species because this is a female-only Pokemon, and breed myself up a nice little Lilligant. Or, for example, today we're going to grab one of these Roselias. So let's say I want to start with this Roselia. It has 1x31 SPDEF. Let's go ahead and check its egg group. It is Fairy and Plant. You want to head over to your PC search box function. This is going to be your best friend. You're going to use this constantly. And I would just go ahead and look for Fairy and just sort through all my breeder boxes and kind of see if I have any pairings. Now, you want to look for female here as well, since obviously my Roselia is male, so that helps us a little bit faster. This is obviously a female Snubble, but it's 2x31, so that doesn't pair up. A lot of the time, you're going to be looking through your boxes. Even though I have 7 boxes of breeders, I often don't have breeders that pair up, and that's why you end up with so many boxes of breeders, is trying to get the perfect pairings and the right fits. It was, once again, it is like solving a puzzle whenever you do breeding on an Ironman account, and often you may need to go pick up some extra pieces, aka catch some more wild Pokemon, before you can actually finish the landscape of the puzzle. It's definitely difficult and more time consuming than a main account, but in my opinion, breeding is one of the most satisfying things on the Ironman account. The feeling of when you complete a 5x31 Pokemon or breeder, or eventually a competitive Pokemon like this Alpha Tyranitar having the perfect mixed nature, it is one of the best feelings in the world, and one of the best feelings I've ever experienced within PokeMMO. Once you start getting these amazing 5x31 Pokemon like this Charizard that I use for raids, it is a fantastic moment in your PokeMMO career. Next up, tip number 5 is going to be to prepare a bunch of Pokemon for your future storylines. Once you get your first storyline done, which will be your most difficult, all of the other storylines after will be so much easier if you prepare properly. I started in Kanto on my Ironman account, and honestly, there's not really a wrong region to start on the Ironman account. They're all beneficial, but I often recommend Kanto just because being able to head inside the Safari Zone and farm a bunch of Magikarps, and then EV train some of those Magikarps up into Gyaradoses with like 180 attack EVs and be a level 20 Gyarados to then take into my next 4 storylines made the entire account 10 times easier. Sitting in the Safari Zone for 1 to 3 hours and getting a few decent Magikarps by just spamming the Old Rod and spamming Pokeballs, especially when it's 500 Pokeyen to get 30 Safari Balls and potentially catch 20 to 30 Magikarps. This is one of the easiest way to get incredibly powerful storyline Pokemon, as well as just get yourself a bunch of breeders down the road as well. You're really just looking for 15 plus attack IV, 15 plus speed, and then adamant, naughty, or lonely nature. And since we're already in Fuchsia City, you can actually go ahead and just go EV train these over to the east at the Nidorino Timeswipe Hordes. Which, if you don't know, is just right over to the east of Fuchsia City. It's the first little patch of grass. Once you leave through that little intersection between the routes, you can get Timeswipe Hordes of Nidorino here. This is a fantastic plus 10 attack EV training spot. I spent a lot of time here in my early and mid game on the Ironman account, and I still come back here every so often. Next up, tip number 6 is going to be to make sure to get yourself a teleport Pokemon. These are important tips on a main account, but I love to also recommend them on Ironman accounts. Once again, arguably more important. There are certain tips that are even more important on an Ironman account than a main account. You can go get a teleport Pokemon in a few different storylines in a few different ways. One of my favorites is going and grabbing an Abra right here to the north of Cerulean City. These will always have teleport. They're a little bit difficult to catch because of that. Make sure to either lead your party with some sort of Spore Pokemon, or at this point in the storyline, you could have access to a Sleep Powder Compound Eyes Butterfree over from Viridian Forest, or get yourself a Diglett from Diglett Cave that has Arena Trap to keep the Abra around in the fight. But if you can get yourself a Teleport Abra, it's going to make the storyline a lot easier and also help you EV train and XP train faster. Other early game teleport Pokemon in other regions consist of things like Ralts in both Hoenn and Sinnoh. And you could also catch Abra and Kadabra over in Johto at Route 35 and 34 at an uncommon rate, which I know that those routes are high numbers, but it's actually very early on in the game. The only region, in my opinion, where it's actually very difficult to get yourself a teleport Pokemon, especially during the storyline, is actually Unova. If anybody in the comments has any recommendations for good teleport Pokemon in the storyline, please let me know. But to my knowledge, there's not really anything throughout the storyline. I thought maybe Muna or Musharna, but it turns out they don't even learn teleport somehow. Next up, tip number 7 is that buying Pokeballs is almost never a waste of Pokeyen. Now, you do want to be careful and not overspend and stock up on a ton of Pokeballs when you might need that fluidity, that access to Pokeyen more rather than actually just a ton of Pokeballs. But you're going to use Pokeballs a ton on the Ironman account. I usually stock over like 1,000 Pokeballs. I try to keep a little bit of a stock of every single Pokeball in the game. You can get a bunch of them over in Sinnoh once you complete the Sinnoh storyline. Any random Sinnoh Pokemart usually stocks most of the Pokeballs. I usually just go to Pastoria City. The Pokeballs that I use the most on the Ironman account are probably the Simple Pokeball, the Nest Ball, and Quick Balls for catch events. Sometimes Dust Balls, but often Timer Ball. Timer Balls end up being one of the most used balls in the entire account because you are constantly catching alpha Pokemon because of how powerful they are. Next up, tip number 8, you're going to want to go ahead and get yourself a good catching Pokemon. Now, the main two ones are really over in Hoenn is the main problem. So you do like need Hoenn done to be able to really get solid catching Pokemon, which is pretty darn difficult. You can start off with a Sleep Powder Compoundized Butterfree over in Kanto and many other regions. If you don't know, Butterfree gets Compoundized, which raises the accuracy, and it can throw off a Sleep Powder, which normally would be a 75% accuracy move, but with access to the Compoundized, it becomes like 97.5% accuracy, so it's a very, very good option early on. However, Butterfree does not get access to things like False Swipe or other ways to help you catch your Pokemon, unlike things like Smeargle and how Breloom do, and I severely recommend farming Shroomishes and Brelooms over in Petalburg Woods. You can see a lot of people shiny hunting over here, and just like them on an Ironman account, it's very important to come over here and get yourself some good Shroomishes. I recommend getting a good Shroomish or Breloom first if possible, and then using that Shroomish/Breloom to go catch yourself a Smeargle, and that's going to allow yourself to actually sketch the False Swipe in the wild. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a quick second. But first things first, get yourself a decent Shroomish, and then go ahead and make sure to EV train it and XP train it up in 2v2 attack, 2v2 speed. You're looking for 20 plus attack and speed, and then Lonely, Naughty, or Adamant Nature generally. And then you want to take that Breloom over to Artisan Cave. Now, I'm showing you this like it'll be some sort of quick process, but it will not. It'll be an incredibly long process, especially since Breloom is one of the slowest Pokemon to XP train within PokeMMO. But whenever you're ready, you can head over to Artisan Cave, which requires surfing over here in Battle Frontier, coming down this waterfall and surfing all the way to the west. And once you make your way over here, there's a 100% encounter rate of Smeargle, which is really important because you probably want multiple Smeargles, multiple good Smeargles on your Ironman account. There are tons of good Smeargle builds. Look at this one right here that packs False Swipe, Spore, Soaked, and Sweet Scent. I use this all the time, but you can also have things like Teleport on your Smeargle if you want to. You can have different HMs or other power-up moves, or even the legendary moves like V-Create if you wanted to, but that's more of a flex than a valuable utility resource on an Iron Man. But if you have a catching Pokemon before you go and start farming Smeargles, you can go ahead and lead against the Smeargle, click False Swipe. It's going to go ahead and sketch that False Swipe, which is perfect because now you've already sketched one of the main moves that you need. And now you can go ahead and Spore it and then catch it afterwards with usually a Dust Ball. I will say Smeargles actually do have a pretty tough catch rate, so make sure to get some really strong Pokeballs, preferably Dust Balls, before heading over to this location. It's definitely okay to start off with one stuffed catching Pokemon to just go ahead and get the momentum and get things still. Look at that Adamant catch. Adamant 20 attack. Like, if I were a new player, a new Iron Man, it might be fine to just go ahead and stop here and EV train this. If I wanted to, I could also breed it. If I had a Ditto, for example, with like 20 plus speed and 20 plus attack, I could Everstone the nature. But it would be fine to stop here temporarily, but you're going to want to get yourself a good one down the road. It's definitely important with things like catching Brelooms especially. I would not waste the time XP training a Breloom to level 100 without it being pretty darn good. It's going to take a very, very long time. Early to mid-game Iron Man is a balance of trying to figure out what scrappy Pokemon you can get away with temporarily, but also make sure you're thinking of the long term and looking to upgrade. I mean, for example, look at my Smeargle on my account. It is Lonely Nature, 29 attack, 31 speed. This is honestly perfectly serviceable for the rest of the account, but if I wanted to upgrade to 5x31, I could, but I'm in no rush. But if this thing, for example, was like 20 attack or like 18 attack, that might be a much larger problem. And I would want to prioritize upgrading that as soon as possible. You're going to be using your catching Pokemon all the time, so it's worth to get some good ones. Next up, this is going to be a tough one, but it is one of the most important ones. Tip number 9 is to start building your gym rerun team as soon as possible. As soon as you get Johto done, even up until where you can catch yourself Quilava or Cyndaquil, go ahead and go catch some, start breeding them, and start your gym rerun team as soon as possible. I don't care if you only have Johto done as a region. I don't care if you have maybe Johto and Unova. That's perfect. That's all you need. You want to just be able to rebattle some of the gyms a little bit if possible, even if you aren't popping amulet coins. Gym reruns are just your best way to get Pokeyen on an Ironman account, even the beginner ones, and Pokeyen is so hard to get when you don't have all 5 storylines done and you're just in that early stages. Really, the only early game way to get consistent Pokeyen is payday pickup, and we'll talk about that later on in a guide or in a tip in the future. The hardest part of your gym rerun team, your early one, is just getting access to catching, being able to get the Typhlosions. Once you can get the Typhlosions / Cyndaquil / Quilavas, you can go ahead and find ones that are 25 plus special attack and speed, and then modest, mild, or rash nature. All of those will work adequately. Then you want to EV train these in special attack and speed and get them up to like level 85 or so. At level 85, you can go ahead and start doing some stuffed gym reruns, even if you don't have choice specs. As long as you have some charcoals, you can go ahead and start making some Pokeyen. Just getting started on gym reruns as soon as possible is so important on an Ironman account. Scuffed gym reruns are still fantastic progress. On an Ironman account, you're going to have to make sacrifices that a main account wouldn't really normally do. On a main account, it's better to just go make a little bit of Pokeyen and get yourself a proper gym rerun team and get yourself fully kitted out before even going and starting the gym rerun. But on an Ironman account, it takes a lot longer to reach that stage. So it actually is better often to start doing it scrappily sooner. Even if you make 100,000 Pokeyen doing a gym rerun, you know, that is really, really good on an early game Ironman. Extremely good, honestly. With this extremely simple gym rerun team, which I have guides for on my channel, just the double Typhlosion and then Torkoal into Whimsicott or Cottony strategy, you are going to need a fly Pokemon in your inventory, or if you're lucky like me and win a catch event, a fly ocarina. But I'm sure most of you are going to need a fly Pokemon, which is totally fine to just throw in your 5th or 6th slot. You can make 200 to 260,000 or so Pokeyen very consistently with this team. And once again, the Cottony and the Torkoal are so easy to go get. They're just low-level, bad IVs. You don't need anything special here aside from Prankster on Cottony and Drought on Torkoal, Explosion as a move, and then Tailwind as a move on Cottony. Getting Memento is nice as an upgrade at a certain point, but you also don't need it to start things out. The hard part is getting the Typhlosions, which you will need Johto done for. Or at least Johto done up until you can catch Cyndaquils and Quilavas. Next up, tip number 10 is going to be to try to keep an eye out for alpha spawns and maybe even catch an alpha Pokemon if you can. Now, I'm not going to lie, this might be a little bit difficult, but thankfully, alpha Pokemon do scale to all of the Pokemon levels in your party. So you can see, this was actually the first alpha Pokemon that I ever caught on the Ironman account. I still have it, and it was caught one day after creating the account on 5-13 when creating the account on 5-12. And it was scaled down to level 40 to reach the level cap of my storyline Pokemon team. And catching this Nidoking on the Ironman account was such a boon for my storylines. Getting an adamant Pokemon with 15 plus attack and this crazy move pool was fantastic. The sheer force, it was so good. And nowadays, later on, I'll eventually use it as a breeder one day. It also allowed me to log Nidoking in my Pokedex. And there are so many crucial alpha Pokemon you really need on an Ironman account. You might have noticed the screenshot on the left-hand side here. That is what an alpha ping looks like in my Discord, which you can join my Discord using the link in the description. Sometimes people have trouble using that link, so if you ever have trouble with it, go ahead and go up to your browser and type discord.gg/Petrowski. It is a permanent link. For some reason, sometimes Discord likes to tell people it's temporary, it doesn't work for some reason, but so try it on different devices. Try joining on PC and try typing discord.gg/Petrowski. Join that and then try to sign up for the alpha ping role, and it'll look like that, and you can never miss out on an alpha spawn. Now, there are so many crucial alpha Pokemon on an Ironman account. Things like Pickpocket Weavile, which is the only way we can really effectively amulet coin farm on an Ironman account. Things like Contrary Spinda, which is used to catch every single other alpha Pokemon in the game once you get one. Things like Drought Ninetales, which is one of the best raid Pokemon in PokeMMO. Things like Damp Parasect, one of the best catching Pokemon in the game. Things like Drizzle Politoed. It turns out any single hidden ability access Pokemon that has a hidden ability that starts with D is usually pretty good for some reason. Funny how that turns out, but yeah, keep an eye out for these Pokemon because you don't want to be that guy who's been waiting 3 months for a pickpocket Weavile so you can begin efficiently Amulet Coin farming. You want to get these as soon as they appear. Alpha Pokemon are also 2x31 guaranteed, so they're just a really easy way to get yourself some good IV Pokemon really early on. Alpha Pokemon are arguably one of the most broken mechanics in PokeMMO, and I've talked about this for the past 2 years or so ever since they've been introduced. And it turns out they're also really broken on Iron Man accounts, possibly even more broken than on main accounts. If you happen to not know, alpha spawns are the main way that hidden ability access Pokemon are added into PokeMMO. So it's really important to get access to these, otherwise you'll be without crucial Pokemon on your account. Another underrated thing is something like Melodic. Trying to get Melodic for your Pokedex is a pain in the butt, and a lot of other Iron Men have talked to me about how annoying it was to get their Melodic by raising the beauty stat on their Phoebus. I didn't go through that because I just caught myself an Alpha Melodic. If you catch yourself an Alpha Melodic, you're going to dodge a lot of pain because there's no other way to wild catch an Alpha Melodic through something like a random swarm or an Alpha spawn like this. Otherwise, you're going to have to get a Phoebus, which is already annoying, and then evolve it, which is even more annoying. But hopefully you get my point by now. Alpha Pokemon are extremely crucial for a billion reasons, and they're irreplaceable. There is no workaround for not having a Contrary Spinda or a Pickpocket Weavile. These are your only options. Next up, tip number 11 is going to be make sure to go ahead and get yourself an Amulet Coin farming setup as soon as possible. Now, this is a bit more complicated than it used to be. Nowadays, you need at least 2 Pokemon, and you need very specific Pokemon. You used to just be able to lead with a Frisk Pokemon with Thief in the head of your party over here at Island 1 in Kanto. Nowadays, if you do this, you're going to be spammed by Hypnosis Meowths and all sorts of other problems. So it is highly recommended to get yourself a plus defense nature Gothitelle. This is actually the only Pokemon that can learn this exact specific moveset that you want to use over at this spot. You need yourself a plus defense Gothitelle. It can be bold, impish, really anything, even like gentle or lax, whichever one raises defense and minuses Spadef. You just need it to be plus defense. It can be whatever else, you know, the minuses. 2v2 HP EVs, 2v2 speed, you might want, or sorry, 2v2 defense, you might want a little speed if your Gothitelle is lower speed IV. It's honestly better safe than sorry. Maybe like my Gothitelle is so bulky at this point, I would recommend maybe taking a bit of defense EVs out. Maybe do like half defense EVs, half speed if you're really worried about your speed stat. But if your speed is 25 plus in your Gothitelle, just dump all into defense. You should be good. But you really just need HP, defense, and speed. Spatak and Spadef are irrelevant for the most part for this specific build, but it looks nice, obviously. And you want to rock Imprison, Nasty Plot, Hypnosis, and then some sort of damaging move to beat down the Horde if you need to get the shiny for whatever reason, if you get a shiny here, and then Frisk as the ability. This is all very specific. You also see a Flame Orb. Flame Orb is really good because if you ever get 2 Amulet Coins or 2 items within one Horde, which does happen every so often, you will need to switch your Gothitelle back into the Meowths at some point without an Imprison up, which is going to allow them to go ahead and spam a bunch of Hypnosises, putting your Gothitelle back to sleep. The Flame Orb burns your Gothitelle, giving it no negative, you know, doesn't really matter. You're taking a little bit of chip damage, but that's totally fine. It's really no negative, honestly, for the sake of this farming method. And you get to dodge being put to sleep, which is way more of a problem. And then you also have to have these, and this is the hard part on the Iron Man account, you also have to have these Pickpocket Weaviles. This is why it's so important to try to go to these Hordes whenever possible. And the more Pickpocket Weaviles you have, the better. It is super important to have multiple Pickpocket Weaviles if possible for when there are multiple Amulet Coins within one Meowth Horde, which once again does happen. It's honestly pretty brutal that I think getting Amulet Coins and farming Amulet Coins on an Iron Man account right now is pretty tough, but that's also the point of the account and what makes everything so damn rewarding. Also, I recommend training your Weaviles if possible in HP and defense, but obviously, as you can see, this one is attack and speed EV trained right here, and it works fine. If you want to multi, you know, if you have a Weavile you want to multi-use in both PVM or PvP and then change the ability whenever you need to, I think it's totally fine to use the 2v2 attack and 2v2 speed one, but having one bulky one might be nice. This one's not even EV trained, and these work fine. You really just need it to tank a few attacks and then get that pickpocket trigger. Now, this is a decently complicated strategy these days, and I do have a full video guide on this as well. And that guide, of course, will be linked in the description. Now, in case you don't know, the reason why you need amulet coins is because they are used every single time you do a gym rerun or a trainer rerun. They increase your Pokeyen yield by 50%. They are unbelievably, disgustingly worth it to go pick up. Amulet coins are so important, and honestly, it can feel like a waste of time to do trainer runs or gym runs without them. It's better to just wait until you have one, unless you need some really quick early game yen, but they are just so freaking powerful. And that's a tough pill to swallow on an Iron Man, and with the new strategy being so difficult to actually achieve, it's become more of a mid-game to end-game strategy as opposed to the early game strategy it used to be. But hey, if you're not up for a little bit of a challenge, why are you playing an Iron Man account? Everything is going to be that much sweeter because it is that much more challenging. When you can finally do a full good Jimmy run on an Iron Man account, whew, oh baby, it's a nice feeling, man. Next up, tip number 12. I actually have pretty lucky timing for this since there is a swarm right now active in Kanto, and honestly, this is a decent example. Tip number 12 is to keep an eye out for swarms. As you can see here, there's currently a Vespa-Queen swarm over in Kanto. This could be the difference of me completing my Pokedex a little bit earlier if I can go grab myself a Vespa-Queen in Kanto, which is usually a Pokemon you'd need to have like Unova unlocked to be able to catch. A really good example of a really powerful swarm to keep an eye out for, and there's many of them on the Iron Man account, but a Quilava swarm could be the difference of you being able to make your Jimmy Run team without needing the entire Johto region done. Like, stuff like that is super crucial. A Melodic swarm could be the difference of when do you complete your Pokedex, 1 week earlier or 1 week later, right? And then keep an eye out for things like Porygon swarms and Rotom swarms. Very powerful genderless Pokemon, which provide a lot of value, especially Porygon swarms, because Porygon swarms are actually the only way to get Porygon other than going to the Kanto Celadon City Casino. That's it. This is the only way to get wild Porygon. So Porygon swarms are probably the most important swarm for your Pokedex within PokeMMO on an Iron Man account, but pretty much all of them, especially early to mid game. I don't go to swarms as much these days. I still try to go to Porygon and Rotom swarms on the end game Iron Man account after 2,000 or so hours, but when you're in the early game, go to every swarm you can. When you're in early and mid game, swarms are so good, which is a really cool feeling because I feel like for a lot of people, this is a mechanic that has fallen off on a lot of main accounts. So them being good again on the Iron Man is a big point there. Next up for tip number 13, we are over here at Twist Mountain in Univok. This is a really good example. Tip number 13 is to make sure to go ahead and utilize lures as a way to get trade evolve Pokemon for your Pokedex. Lures are going to give you special access to specific Pokemon in certain parts, certain routes and regions, and Conkeldurr can only be found in the wild as a lure encounter in Twist Mountain. So if I were to pop a lure, run back and forth, I would have a 5% chance to encounter Conkeldurr. Now, why is Conkeldurr so important, Petrowski? Why do I need a Conkeldurr? Because Conkeldurr is a trade evolution Pokemon. Trade evolutions are not allowed in my Iron Man rule sets. Some people allow them, but in my opinion, I think it takes away a lot of the rarity and a lot of the coolness of things like Conkeldurr. For example, when you ban trade evolutions and not make a stipulation for it, like in my opinion, you want to avoid as many stipulations as possible. You want to keep the account as close to the rules as possible, right? When you do this, what happens is Shiny Conkeldurr becomes a rare shiny on an Iron Man account. It becomes one of the coolest Pokemon you could possibly flex, number one. Number two, Conkeldurr as a competitive Pokemon becomes one of the most valuable Pokemon to have a good version of on the Iron Man account. You can only really wild catch Conkeldurrs to get a good PvP version, or you can win one from a PvP reward. That's why what's really, so right now, wow, what are the odds? What are the timing? Right now, Conkeldurr is a PvP reward in the OU tier. This is one of the best PvP rewards you can get as an Iron Man account, and it's also really important because Conkeldurr gets a very important egg move in Mach Punch. You cannot breed up a good Conkeldurr on an Iron Man account because if you breed it, it will get sent back down to a Timber. You can get it up to a Girder, but you can never evolve it back into a Conkeldurr, so they're only wild catchable. What do you do about an egg move then? Egg moves can be learned via the PvP rewards. So you need Mach Punch. Mach Punch is incredibly crucial on Conkeldurr. So winning yourself a good IV competitive gift Conkeldurr with Mach Punch, one of the best rewards on an Iron Man. And that's just Conkeldurr. This is all also true with a Pokemon like Gengar, a fan favorite, which is only encounterable by a lure in Kanto within Pokemon Tower and is also a trade evolution. The same is true for things like Golem, but I think Golem has more encounters usually. Usually you can Rock Smash him. Yeah, so it's not a great example. But there's a few others, I believe. Gengar and Conkeldurr are the main ones that come to mind. Now, you don't need to worry about trait evolutions for things like Scizor, for example, because PokeMMO actually updated the game about within the past 1 to 2 years, where instead of having to trade Scyther while holding a metal coat, which you used to have to do, you can actually nowadays just use a metal coat on a Scyther, and that will evolve it. The same is true for things like Rhyperior, where you use a protector item on a Rhydon. So anything that is trade a Pokemon with an item, you don't have to worry about that. You can just use the item on it these days, which is a nice little quality of life. Next up, a crucial tip number 14 for Iron Man. How many of you knew that there was a crafting system within PokeMMO? Well, more of a trading system of weird resources, but people call it a crafting system and have for many, many years. This is actually one of the main ways, probably the only real way. You can get some from the storyline and such, but this is the main way that Iron Man will get PP ups and PP maxes. Now, 3 PP ups equal 1 PP max, and they're kind of the same price, 9, 18. I think it's a little bit cheaper, actually, in terms of berry powder to go ahead and get yourself a PP max, so I would just go ahead and recommend that most of the time. You're going to need 24 berry powders and 3 white herbs. And you can find this NPC over at the Indigo Plateau or the Kanto Elite Four. Now, thankfully, berry powder is actually pretty darn easy to go ahead and get. You can just crush pretty much any berry, I believe. So if I were to take these orange berries and go ahead and crush 3 of them, I would go ahead and get 3 berry powder. Now, white herbs are a lot more complicated. White herbs are generally bought from the battle towers across PokeMMO. And since we're in Kanto, I'll show you the Kanto one. I believe you can go buy these over at Trainer Tower. This will be a good quick little test, honestly. You can definitely buy these at the Battle Tower shop within Hoenn, and you can also buy them in the little railroad location in Unova, in the middle of, like, I think, Nimbasa City. Yep, right here. If you go talk to this NPC in Trainer Tower in Kanto, you can find yourself the white herbs. They do cost BP. That is the tough part of this, but you got to do what you got to do, and it is well worth it to spend 300 BP for a PP max effectively. And banking off of that berry powder tip, now we have tip number 15, and I mean this very seriously, okay? You need to keep every single berry and do not use them in battle if possible. Crushing them down into the berry powder for the PP maxes, that's worth it, and then using the harvesting tool to crush them into seeds. Those are the 2 things that are incredibly worth it. But generally, even orange berries, don't use them in fights. Do not use them in battles if at all possible. If you're in a fight with the Elite Four and you get frozen or some shit, try to use an ice heal or the antidotes, the medicine. The medicine are so much better to use than the berries, because berries and getting into berry farming is probably the hardest thing I had to do on my Iron Man account. Getting started on berry farming is an absolute nightmare. You have not enough seeds, not nearly enough seeds or berries, and you have to crush them down as little as possible. I was planting like 3 berries at a time, 3 berry patches, and then waiting like 24 hours for them to grow, and then trying to do that over, and then doubling to like 6, and then 12, and then 24, and it's a very slow process that takes a few weeks. And then usually on top of all of that, if you make one mistake here or there, you can just set everything back or lose everything. It's very, 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 very scary. Berry farming is very difficult to get started on the Iron Man account. I was doing things like ×5 hordes of Poochyena and thieving Pecha berries. Every single one little Pecha berry from a Poochyena was incredibly, incredibly helpful. But it was a sickening strategy to have to deploy, I'm not gonna lie. I hope to do a full Iron Man berry farming guide soon, because it is probably one of the more difficult things on the account once again, so keep an eye out for that. Next up, tip number 16 is a fun one, and it's that playing randoms PvP is really, 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 really good for early game Iron Man. You can win tons of free items like the PP maxes here we just recently talked about, or a competitive gold bat, or if you get high enough in the scores, a choice scarf and a choice specs for free. Incredibly, incredibly good rewards for Iron Man. You also get passive battle points. You get check marks of battle points, and you also usually win a little bit of BP per PvP victory. If you are good at PvP, congratulations. Iron Man is going to be a pretty good game mode for you. You get a lot of good rewards from it that you otherwise wouldn't, and it's cool that you get that skill-based, resources. If you're not good at PvP, don't worry. There is no downside to losing, aside from losing a little bit of time, but even then, you're getting better. You're practicing, and that is needed within PokeMMO. If you are new to PvP within PokeMMO, or just new to PokeMMO PvP, you have to expect to lose a lot. It's a very difficult, very competitive PvP game. But once again, you don't lose anything from losing aside from your time. You're not going to go down in resources or points aside from elo, but that doesn't really matter. At least when you're starting out and learning. Obviously, if that's your goal to get like top 100 or top 10, that's awesome. You should definitely try to go for that. And make sure to always queue for ranked. Something I see new players do is queuing up for casual. You should never queue up for casual PvP within PokeMMO. You just get no rewards and no benefits. The only upside is that it doesn't hurt your elo when you queue up for casual. But once again, don't let your like sense of self-worth or your value in PvP get tied to your elo. Your elo truly does not matter. And it's honestly a good thing to see when you start out playing PvP. You can go back and go through your seasons and see like, oh, my first season playing, I was at like a 49% win rate or a 40% win rate, and then seeing that go up. Obviously, this is not a great example here, but often as new players, you can see yourself have like a 30% win rate in your first season, and then like a 42%, and then a 55%, and then, you know, kind of up and up and up. And it's really cool to see that progress. Tip number 17 is going to be to play as many catch events on your Ironman account as possible. As soon as you get your first region done, you should be looking over catch events and seeing if there are any coming up within the region you have completed. If you aren't aware, catch events are one of the only way to win reward points on an Ironman account, the premium currency. And this ends up being one of the biggest endgame goals on an Ironman account. If you don't know, catch events as a TLDR are really just events where you go and you catch a bunch of Pokemon, and then you submit one Pokemon as an entry to try to win the catch event. You either want to submit your highest IV catch Pokemon or your lowest IV catch. I have plenty of videos covering catch events explained and how to enter them and submit your entry, as well as guides on how to increase your chances of winning a catch event. Catch events are really freaking fun. They're a great way to be involved in the community, grind the game naturally, as well as having an overarching chance at a really cool reward like a shiny Pokemon, a shiny Vespiquen, or reward points in premium currency. But sadly, I think catch events over the past 2 years or so have become less and less viable for main accounts since they cost more money than you actually get from them. However, this is not a problem on the Ironman account, and this might be one of my favorite parts of playing an Ironman account, is that catch events become meta to do. So if you like catch events and you find them fun, the Ironman is the perfect game mode for you, in my opinion. It becomes one of the biggest elements of endgame grinding, is doing as many catch events as possible and giving yourself as many chances to win RP as possible. Now, the odds of winning a catch event are low because you're competing against everybody else. If 300 people show up to a catch event, your odds of winning are about 1 in 300. So make sure you keep that in mind and don't get entitled. I see a lot of people doing their first catch event and then ending up upset, you know, after if they don't win within their first like 10 catch events. And it's important to keep that perspective. If you win, it means everybody else can't. It takes a very long time. It took me about 120 catch events before I ever won my first catch event, and honestly, I think that was still pretty lucky. And that was on my main account. On my Ironman account, I've been disgustingly lucky with catch events, so I'm not the best person to ask about entitlement. I may or may not have gotten this shiny Corsola within the first month of the account, which was, yeah, very, 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 very lucky. There are many items you can only buy with reward points in PokeMMO, and I'll probably talk about this in more detail in a later tip, but something like the XP Reamplifier, the PC expansion drives, chum buckets if you want to, but I would recommend it, ocarinas. There's a lot of very powerful permanent items you can pick up on your account. I have a fly ocarina here, for example, which is why I'm able to fly with no Pokemon with fly, or with that Pidgeotto that's obviously not in my party. Next up, tip number 18. I touched on like queuing up for ranked randoms PvP or just PvP in general, but there are also PvP tournaments almost every single day within PokeMMO. And if you are good at PvP, playing PvP tournaments is a really good way to win a ton of crazy rewards. For example, today, this NU tournament is giving away a shiny gift Venomoth with really good stats and, once again, reward points. This is the second way to win reward points on an Ironman account. You are not allowed to credit card swipe on an Ironman account. That is strictly against the rules. The whole point of the Ironman account is to make things fair and balanced for everyone and get rid of the paid for advantage elements that most modern MMOs unfortunately can have. You can also just win other good non-shiny Pokemon or hundreds of thousands of Poke-Yen at a time. Even if you just place, you can win good rewards. You can win things like unique vanities and tons of reward points if you win a massive tournament, like a seasonal finale tournament. That's a big one, obviously, so I don't expect that always, but like a shiny Pokemon with 1,300 reward points, even just placing in an event like that and winning a few hundred reward points here and there is going to be absolutely massive. Getting top 8 is 125 points. Like, that's really, really, really good. I love that being good at PvP is rewarded on an Ironman account, even though I'm not very good at PvP, but maybe one day I'll get there. And next up, tip number 19 helped me get into what is, in my opinion, the hardest thing to do on the Ironman account, which is getting into berry farming. Getting your initial berries and seeds to start berry farming was the single hardest thing that I ever did on this account. And one of the main ways that I was even able to do that was actually by turning in different shards. The red shards, the blue shards, and the yellow shards, which you can get from Pokemon while fishing in the wild, into this NPC right here in Violet City in Johto. Right next to the PC, you can find the juggler, and you can trade him shards. And you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, a red shard will get you 1 cherry berry, 1 chesto, and 1 pecha berry. A blue shard will get you 1 rost, aspir, and persim, and 1 yellow will give you a figgy, wiki, and mango, and then a green shard will give you an aguave, an iapa, and then a leppa berry. Just 1 of each berry. And that was so much better than just going around and thieving hordes of Poochyena for pecha berries. It is one of the hardest things to explain to new Ironmen, way harder than you would expect. Getting the initial seeds to get started on berry farming was a nightmare, and it's really important to never lose your big stacks of seeds like this. This is something that only an Ironman would really need to know about, and it's something that, in my opinion, you must know about if you want to get into berry farming within PokeMMO on an Ironman. And speaking of berry farming, tip number 20 is that harvesting tools are one of the most crucial items on an Ironman account if you plan to do any berry farming. You will end up spending hundreds of thousands and even millions of Pokeyen on them, and they can be bought from this NPC over in Mistralton City by the berry patch in Unova, one of the most important berry patches, and then the other berry patch is over by Abundant Shrine. If you aren't familiar, you can go ahead and talk to this guy, this little NPC in between these first 2 rows, and buy yourself however many harvesting tools you need. It costs you about 350k for 1,000 of them, and I usually run through about 900 of these or 800 of these a day if I am consistently berry farming. So yeah, it gets very expensive very quickly. One gym rerun is going to cost you, about your entire stack of harvesting tools for the day. Now, if you do plant leppas, you don't have to use those. But what harvesting tools actually do, if you don't know, you use them on berries like pecha berries, and this is going to convert them into seeds. So you crush these and they turn into seeds. So I got 3 plain sweet seeds from crushing those pecha berries. That allows me to replant more pecha berries and get more seeds, and you have to do what's called a sustainability batch before you can actually do leppas on an Ironman account. So for example, my batches today, I've planted a sustainability batch. I've planted a bunch of cherry berries and then a bunch of rost berries and pecha berries over in the other batches over here at Abundant Shrine. Once you get to Abundant Shrine, you can fly to it, so that's really nice. Getting back here by hand would be a pain in the butt all the time if you couldn't do that, but you have to constantly I usually do about 2 or 3 days of sustainability batches and then 1 big day of leppas. You could do a little bit, like 1 to 2 to 3, maybe 4 patches like this of leppas every day, and then just do the rest sustainability and do a little bit of leppas every day. I prefer 1 giant batch of leppas, so it really comes down to whichever you prefer when it comes to berry farming. But not every Ironman is going to need leppa berries. It really only matters if you want to do leppa shiny hunting or just certain other activities, but I recommend having at least a few of them, honestly, on hand. And speaking of having a few of a certain berry on hand, I do recommend every single Ironman get like 50 to 100 of all of the EV reducing berries. These can be really important in a pinch if you need to re-EV a Pokemon for a certain raid. There's been certain times where I needed to get rid of a few speed stats or raise my bulk a little bit, or vice versa, raise my speed a little bit on a bulky Pokemon to make sure I could outspeed something so it wouldn't go in a weird order and prioritize the AI targeting against my Pokemon, for example, in a big time raid. So having things like the Pomeg berries, the Kelpsy berry, the Qualot berry, the Hondu berry, the Greppa berry, and the Tomato berry, which at the very top you can all see, this lowers the speed EVs by 10, these lower the SpDef EVs by 10, and so on and so on. Having like 50 to 100 of these is really important in my opinion. It's really important to set yourself up on an Ironman to be able to adjust on the fly, so you are never holding back your teammates in situations like raids. I always say that the Ironman account is all about being at endgame and playing alongside the other players without looking like we're an Ironman or without holding them back, obviously. That's the endgame goal. Playing with an inherent disadvantage, but still hanging with the best of the best. Next up, tip number 21 is that hard scale farming is a crucial activity for Ironmen. Hard scales are the items that allow you to relearn moves on Pokemon, whether you've accidentally deleted them or forgotten them, or you caught the Pokemon at too high of a level in the wild. There's tons of reasons why you need to relearn moves all the time. Maybe you need to change a moveset for something temporarily. That happens decently often going between raids or PVM and PvP. Usually you want different movesets on those Pokemon. What I use is actually a Thief Sticky Hold Muck. The reason why is because Sticky Hold increases the chance of bites while fishing, so it makes the encounters a bit faster, and you can just go ahead and use a Muck with plus attack nature, so Lonely, Naughty, or Adamant, 2v2 attack EVs, maybe speed EVs, and then a decently high level, 31 attack as you can see here, and you just go ahead and thief every single encounter you get over at Evergrande City. This is where I found myself enjoying to do it, but you can do it in probably a couple different locations. I know some people really like Undella Bay, but I think that's really better for like a multitude of things. I think purely hard scale farming is better over here, at least in my anecdotal experience. But you want to go ahead and just get your super rod out and just keep fishing, go for some encounters, and you just thief every single love disc or every single Pokemon that really appears here, and getting items and making sure to take those items off of your muck after you go ahead and get them, if you get them. There's no frisk for this, so you just truly thief everything. You don't even get to see if they have an item before, you go ahead and do it. You just thief everything just like that, and oh, I found a free Pokeball along the way. You're also passively shiny hunting while doing this, and could be XP trading something, I guess, but it's not a ton of XP, but hey man, little increments here and there definitely add up over time. There also are some cool shinies here, like Corsola, and you can get shards from these to turn in for berries, like we talked about earlier. So it's kind of a multi-use spot, which is always really important on an Ironman account. And it's cool how every single resource on an Ironman account is valuable in some way, where on a main account, you would just chuck those shards into a Pokemart or something. Next up, tip number 22 is that you will need to constantly buy more Pokeballs, and plenty of different varieties. The two main places to buy them are at any Pokemart in Sinnoh. Once you have the storyline completed, you'll find a huge variety of Pokeballs, as you can see here, from Pokeballs to Dust Balls to Quick Balls to Timer Balls. One of the most used ball on the Ironman account, especially for a lot of the alpha catches that you do. Repeat Balls for Dittos, Dream Balls for certain instances as well. Almost every single ball here does get used pretty consistently, maybe aside from Heal Ball, but everything else is pretty consistently used from my experience. But if you don't have the Sinnoh storyline done yet, you can also head over to Unova and go to the shopping mall there. I go there a fair bit. To get to the shopping mall, you head over to Oplucid City, which is the top middle city in Unova, and then head straight west onto this route over here, and eventually you'll see a big tall building, and you just head north into that. And I believe Pokeballs are the second floor on the northwest over here, right here. I believe this should be, yep, the variety of Pokeballs as you can see. Next up, I'm going to try to quickly show you something that only an Ironman would ever have to know. Tip number 23 is the Everstone farming method if you need to farm Everstones in mass. Now, you can also farm Everstones passively if you plan to do a lot of fossil hunting. I'm up to 463 Everstones now, and that's because I've been fossil farming for Shiny Wars. So if you care about going for a bunch of fossils because you want some sort of rare shiny, you can do that, but it's going to be a long and slow process to get all the Everstones, versus over here you can get I think 20 to 25 Everstones per hour. Just do this for 1 to 2 hours and you'll be set for a very long time within your breeds. But the method is as follows. You start over here in Driftvale City, and I do recommend some repels to get to the location. We're going to go ahead and pop a repel here, loop around here. Just keep following my path, looping around. It's really the only way you can go. And then once you get to this bridge, you want to actually head up here. And it's really important to note, before we head east to the cave where we are headed to, we're actually going to head over to this house and show you that you can heal, I believe, with this NPC right here. So talking to this NPC will heal you. You're going to come back to her instead of going back to the PC because it is much closer. We're going to continue heading over here through the grass. We're going to surf on this water right here. And we have some specific Pokemon in our party, but if you don't have a Claydol with this exact moveset and then Pickpocket Weaviles, you can just use a Frisk Thief Pokemon. You will not get nearly as many Everstones per hour, but it's still quite good if you just want to get some Everstones to start breeding. But once you head inside of this cave right here, you can go ahead and hit Sweet Scent. Even though it is dark in here, you don't actually need Flash because we're not going within the cave itself. We're just going to be at this little location. So what I usually do here is we go against a giant horde of 5 Boldor. I'm going to go ahead and hit Imprison. And then that's going to imprison every single non-contact move that they have. The non-contact moves are Smackdown, Mud Slap, and Iron Defense. That's going to leave them just with Headbutt. So they're all going to Headbutt my Claydol. I'm going to go ahead and swap over to one of my Weaviles. And Everstones are so common, it's almost always guaranteed that at least one of these guys has an Everstone. Not every single time, not every single fight, but it's pretty common. Let's see if I can show you guys a trigger right here. It'd be really embarrassing if the one time I do this, there is no trigger. Yeah, that's of course. Anyways, it's very common. I would say it's almost every single fight, if not every other fight maybe. Let's see if I can show it to you this time. But this text is so fast, and it's so incredibly fast to just basically go ahead and click Imprison and switch to the Weavile every single time. It's even faster than like going through and fristing each horde and individually thiefing each Boldore and waiting for all their turns to play out. This is so much faster from my experience. Okay, that is unlucky though. It is recommended to have some nice bulk on your Weavile for this. That is important. I recommend going 2v2 defense EVs and HP versus the attack and speed like you see here. But these can obviously work. As you see, like this is totally working fine for me. And my Weaviles aren't even max level. If they were level 100, this would help a lot more. This is also a great way to shiny hunt for a very cool shiny. Blue Boldore looks awesome. The only sad thing is that based on my Iron Man rules, you can't evolve it into a shiny Gigalith, and that's kind of a bummer. And what's even more of a bummer is not getting an Everstone within 3 hordes. I don't know if that's happened in a very long time for me with this method. And this is why it's nice to have multiple pickpocket Weaviles if you are lucky enough to have that, obviously. But you can also just bring some potions and heal your one pickpocket Weavile. That's something that I used to do. Okay, I didn't get a single Everstone in 6 sweet cents, but that is very abnormal, I promise you. Go ahead and go try this out for yourself, and let me know your numbers in the comments down below. I used to get about 25 Everstones per hour doing this. I'm going to go heal up and try again, and then also show you guys the Frisk Thief method, which is much slower, but still very viable and doable if you just need some Everstones. And there we go. When you finally get a pickpocket, it's going to look like that. And when that happens, you can go ahead and leave the fight. That was on the first sweet scent of my heal. And then sometimes you do get hard stones. So, okay, you do get hard stones as well, which you can also get passively from fossil farming. But this spot, I think, only has hard stones and hard stones and Everstones. If I recall, I don't think there are any fossils you can wildly get from this location. But once again, this should be pretty rapid Everstones. If you go ahead and switch your Bayonet to the front of the party, this setup is a lot of work, right? Having this very specific Claydol with the pickpocket Weaviles, not every Iron Man's gonna have that. I think this is a good goal for mid-game Iron Man to definitely go for, but if you don't, you can just have this Frisk Thief Bayonet, which of course, I immediately get a Frisk on the very first horde with this strategy, which is a worse strategy, but you can go ahead and go through and thief each one, and I got really lucky. It's so funny. The optimal strategy I showed you guys, unlucky, bad luck. Frisk strategy, first thief, first encounter, I get an Everstone. And it's nice because all their headbutts do miss, so you do get some nice survivability. But once you go ahead and you get the Everstone, you can go ahead and leave the fight. Especially if there's only one Frisk like this, there's no reason to stick around. So just go ahead and grab your Everstone and skedaddle out of there. This is definitely a viable strategy that I recommend to a lot of early game Iron Man. It's just using the Frisk Bayonet Thief strat. Next up, tip number 24 is a very important one. It's that ability patches are one of the most permanent decisions you can make on your Iron Man account, and they'll be one of the most valuable resources that you can make and use on your account. You only get 5 ability patches for your entire career on an Iron Man account. You cannot get any more at the time of recording this video. There is no method within game to get more of these. What ability patches do is they give hidden ability access to starter Pokemon. This is very important because using a fire patch on a Charizard to give him solar power is one of the most crucial things you can do to get yourself a good raid Charizard, which is one of the most commonly used and powerful raid Pokemon. Also, getting yourself something like a Contrary Superior can be really valuable and important for PvP. What ability patches you get is dependent on what type of starter you picked in that region. So if you go fire starter like a Charmander, if you pick Charmander in Kanto, by the time you end up completing the Kanto Pokedex, you head back to the professor's lab, and I believe you talk to this redhead girl over here, and each region has one of these NPCs. You'll talk to them and they will give you an ability patch correlating to the starter that you picked. So if you picked like Snivy, you know, in Unova, you'll get yourself a grass ability patch. This is why, from the very start of your Iron Man account, I cannot recommend and push this enough to plan out what starters you want to pick based on your ability patch. Picking out your starters based on your ability patches is so much more crucial, in my opinion, than just picking out starters based on power level to complete the storylines. Your starters are neutral nature and 15 IVs across anyway, so they're not going to be like the most help in the world. To be fair, this does only matter if you plan to be a decently endgame Iron Man, but in my opinion, the fun of Iron Man is in the endgame. I think doing the storyline without trading is kind of interesting, but I think the real game begins once you start trying to do raids or shiny wars or catch events or other in-game activities as a restricted account. I think Nuzlockes are better suited accounts if you're looking for a challenge in these storylines. Next up, tip number 25, and this is a universal one across main accounts and Iron Man accounts, and that is to save Master Balls for shinies that can KO themselves. Do not Master Ball, at least in my opinion, things like legendaries, things like alpha Pokemon. These are some of the things you see the most Master Balls wasted on, at least in my opinion. Once again, this is a video game. If it makes you happy to go Master Ball a level 2 Bidoof on Route 1, go do it, king or queen or person of royalty. It's no skin off my back. It does not affect me, right? It's one of those things like, whatever makes you happy at the end of the day, that's actually the most efficient option. I often talk a lot about efficiency within PokeMMO, but it's just to give people the information, and then you can make your own choices. If you watch my streams, you know very, very well that I do not play this game very efficiently. I like to relax and talk to Twitch chat and hang out while doing my gym reruns. Each MMO gameplay is all about knowing what the best options are and then choosing what percentage you want to be playing at in between. But I think Master Balls are a pretty comfy one to just go ahead and recommend. I don't recommend using them unless it's on a shiny Pokemon that can KO themselves. If you want to like make a legendary catch, or you want to go ahead and maybe have a wild shiny that's like super rare, like a wild caught Riolu in a Master Ball is obviously very based and very cool, but generally keeping these for explosion Pokemon when you don't have a damp Pokemon on accident is very important. A memento Pokemon like Hoppip. There's just tons of ways that shinies can KO themselves. A cursed Spirit Tomb or cursed Golurk if you make a few mistakes. It's really easy for shiny fights to go awry, and a Master Ball is like an oh shit escape button to help you save that shiny. Next up, tip number 26 is that getting roaming legendaries is not only a great personal goal, but can also help you out a ton in things like raids or trainer reruns in the case of Articuno. Legendaries are very powerful, so they are often used for things like PVM, PvP, and once again, things like little money-making methods like trainer reruns for the case of Alpha Articuno, or honestly any Articuno. Roaming legendaries, if you don't know, are somewhere between a 1001 rate and a 1000 and 7999. So basically between 1 in 1k and 1 in 8k is the around encounter rate for legendaries. We don't know the exact rate. It has not been disclosed yet, and they can be encountered in the wild in both Kanto and Johto as long as you are not inside of a cave. Once you have completed the Elite Four, I believe, it might just be eight badges. I have a full video on this if you want to see roaming legendaries or legendaries explained within PokeMMO, but yes, they are also very important on an Iron Man account because it's the only way you can get them. On a main account, you can just go buy them off the GTL, and having the OT still matters, but on an Iron Man account, you've got to earn them yourself, and that's a pretty cool flex in my opinion. Tip number 27 is to be very careful about EV training. It is better to be safe than sorry. De-EVing something is a pain in the butt. I know we touched on EV reducing barriers earlier, but they suck to get and take a very long time to grow. This is a good example. I actually accidentally EV'd this Marshtomp incorrectly. I should have gone into Bulk, and I ended up going into Speed because I was just EV training a bunch of Pokemon at once, and I just wasn't looking and I forgot. What happens now is that instead of de-EVing this thing with my tomato berries, it's actually better to just go ahead and rebreed this thing, get the stats up a fair bit, and then eventually re-EV it in the future. This is not that big of a deal since I'm so late into my account, but if you are in the early to mid game, this can be a devastating blowback, which will cost you so much time. So please just be careful about what Pokemon you EV and just be very slow and patient about it, as well as, once again, go ahead and use the rebreeding technique as opposed to always de-EVing. When you rebreed a Pokemon, obviously all the EVs go back down to 0 as it's a new fresh Pokemon, and EV training is very fast. It takes about 30 minutes to EV train 5 Pokemon in one stat. So about an hour to do both typically, maybe less if you're fast enough. That is much, much faster than the 44-hour grow time just to get a few EV reducing berries. And that's not including all the seeds you're going to consume trying to get those, which seeds are one of the most valuable things on an Iron Man. And I know I touched on this in a previous tip, but it's because I am a yapper. But tip number 28 is to always keep some EV reducing berries on you just in case. Once you can start effectively growing them, always have 50 to 100 emergency stat adjustments in case of raids or temporary PVM content, like going for that Alpha Articuno, for example, which was only available for about 2 weeks or so during the Christmas holiday event. It was a rush to make sure I could go ahead and get that. Next up, tip number 29 is that box space is limited, so it's really important to plan out breeds ahead of time. A good example is I have these Pokemon lined up to breed with these eggs. I've already pre-planned them before even going through with these breeds. But something you also might want to avoid is having 3 to 4 Pokemon of the same species. For example, you want to be careful with how many Garchomps you have. Yes, Garchomp is very, very good, but you don't want to end up with like 3 to 4 of the same species with good IVs. Maybe with a Garchomp, you want like 1 Adamant Garchomp and 1 Jolly Garchomp. If you plan to play PvP, maybe a tanked Garchomp, but you want to avoid stacking multiple EV-trained Pokemon of the same species because you're most likely going to have to end up releasing them one day. It's just too much box space to dedicate to one species, and box space ends up being one of the most important resources on an Ironman account once you reach the mid to late game. As you can see, and especially if you've watched my Iron Man series, you've probably seen I am always hurting for box space, and it's a constant struggle trying to breed down Pokemon consistently to clear up space. But it's also a lot of fun. It's a lot of self-management and also a lot of puzzle solving. I think breeding on an Iron Man account is one of the most fun things you can do, even though it can be exhausting at times. Next up, another quick tip, but an important one. Keep your XP candies from alpha catches. Do not burn through these willy-nilly just because they are free and you get them passively. Being able to emergency level a Pokemon for something like raids or a PVM activity is very important. The other day, I was doing an alpha catch, and my alpha Spinda that I used to start every catch was level 75, and it's been level 75 for a very long time. But because it was lower level, it couldn't outspeed an alpha Weavile catch, and I really wanted a third Weavile with Pickpocket for my Iron Man account. As funny as that sounds, I honestly do need a third one. So I just used a few XP Candy extra larges, and I was able to level it up from level 75 to 90, and that allowed it to outspeed the wild alpha, making the catch that much easier. Keeping these on you for emergencies is crucial. Don't just burn through them because you have them. Sometimes playing an Iron Man account is kind of like playing Skyrim, where you work and spend all this gold and time to develop all these healing potions, but then, of course, you never actually try to use them because that would be wasting resources. Feel free to find your right balance. I honestly probably hoard and stack items too much. If you want to use them a little bit more than me, you're probably at that healthy medium. Now, tip number 31 is a big one. Start preparing for event season and raids as soon as possible. It is one of the coolest things you can do on an Iron Man account, in my opinion, and is probably the endgame goal for most Iron Man. Getting full raid teams is one of the most important goals on an Iron Man account. I have infinite guides on my channel going over every raid Pokemon you could possibly need, but I recommend starting with the fire and fighting team and then going from there. Preparing as much as possible beforehand because you will have so little free time during event season. To end up wasting time on making raid Pokemon is going to be awful. Every minute doing something else during an event that isn't the event itself is crucial resources being lost on an Iron Man. Resources like all these different vanities, which the only way for an Iron Man to get vanities is during event season, or at least special vanities and unique vanities, ones that aren't purchasable within the gift shop or Pokemarts, as well as things like special Pokemon like that Alpha Articuno we talked about. And any charms like Riches Charms, Item Magnet Charms, XP Charms, and BP Charms. These are gotten during event season. And even tons of fun items like Mysterious Balls to give yourself a ton of good chances for shinies. But even then, these are actually more pragmatic on an Iron Man account because you get a bunch of good IV breeders as well as special hidden ability access or alpha Pokemon. Alpha Snorlax, for example, I believe is in these Mysterious Dust Balls, and it's a pretty rare chance, but this might be one of your only ways to get an Alpha Snorlax. Getting something like a Shalfa Snorlax on an Iron Man account would be legendary. But next up, tip number 32 is that the XP reamplifier is the best thing to buy with RP by far on an Iron Man account if you are lucky enough to ever win some free reward points. After that, you can probably go for some ocarinas and potentially even box expansions. I think Fly Ocarina is definitely the #1 priority since it allows you to do other things you wouldn't really be able to do without other ocarinas. And as you can see here, this is the amount of RP that I've spent so far. Now, obviously, if you've watched my Iron Man Explained video and everything like that, you understand that credit card swiping and buying RP is strictly against my Iron Man rule set. So the only way to win reward points is by winning PvP tournaments or winning catch events, making it probably the most valuable resource on an Iron Man account. And once again, PC expansion drives. We did not expect PC space to be so limited feeling on an Iron Man account, but it really is. And the PC expansion drives are pretty nice, but they are just so darn expensive. But definitely a good end game, like honestly, hyper end game goal on an Iron Man account would be try to get as many of these as possible. I don't think there will ever be an Iron Man in the history of PokeMMO that will get all 20 of these. If that ever happens, they will have my absolute salutes and honor to them. Tip number 33 is actually a cool one that didn't exist when I created my Iron Man account. You can actually turn on the decline mail option from other people, friends, and teammates. This setting actually didn't exist when I created my Iron Man account on stream, and I had trolls, of course, sending me Pokemon, and it was a real bummer. I was trying to tell people, like, please don't send me stuff because it's going to ruin the validity of my account, and I really want this account to be super integral and yada, yada, yada. Thankfully, people like Steefy and a bunch of other people, I asked people to spam me with mails to fill up my mailbox so that people couldn't send me the stuff. That's what I had to do. Instead of just clicking this setting, I had to have people in my chat spam me with mail. So thankfully, this is a lot easier these days. And even if your mail is full, as you can see, you can still get things like RP or PvP rewards. So don't worry, if your mail is full, you still get access to things like this, so you don't have to worry about the losing out on rewards or rewards or vanities or things like that. Now, thankfully, they did end up adding an option as well where you could actually send back Pokemon. So if someone sends you Pokemon and you're bummed about it, you can actually return to sender nowadays and have those Pokemon never touch your box or your account at all. And that was really important to me personally. I didn't want any sort of accidental Pokedex entry or just any Pokemon that didn't have my OT ever touching my boxes or my party. Tip number 34 is that I heavily recommend you joining an Iron Man team or Discord. Being able to discuss and talk with other Iron Man about strategies and other activities that they're up to is #1 really helpful, but also #2 really inspiring. Going through and seeing what vanities everybody has and what vanities they're rocking. And also because Iron Man strategies are so new and they're constantly being adapted, so finding answers online can be a little bit tough. So being able to get person-to-person contact on stuff like this is a definite must or hugely recommended on an Iron Man account. You don't need this as much on a main account. There's so many resources these days, you can usually just Google most questions and find answers. Tip number 35 is that there are so many crucial utility Pokemon for Iron Man accounts that main accounts don't really need as much. Things like multiple even, tanky, frisk, Dusclops. I use these for tons of fossil farming back to back without having to head back to the PC constantly to heal. These all have to have hidden ability access to be frisk Dusclops and then trained in 2v2 defense and HP and have the thief move. Tanky Gothitelle has also become a crucial part of the Iron Man account, using this consistently for amulet coin farming. And you have to amulet coin farm a ton on an Iron Man account. If you want to make money on an Iron Man account, you're going to need so many amulet coins. I have farmed hundreds of these on my account now. And it needs to have this very specific moveset. But don't worry, I do have a new updated amulet coin farming guide using this Gothitelle strategy on my channel, which should be linked in the description down below. If you're looking for something that I mentioned here today as well, make sure to ask me in the comments, and I always try to direct people to the correct videos whenever possible. And now, a bit of a harsh tip. For tip number 36, if you ever plan to do Shiny War on an Iron Man account, all I can say is good luck. No, but seriously, if you do, there are a few things you have to consider. You cannot prep Dittos in the same way as a main account, where they have things like alt accounts, and they can use their mail to store a bunch of Dittos. We only have the amount of box space that we have within our boxes, of course. We don't have extra resources. We have to store as many eggs as possible heading up into war, but the main ways that you are able to prepare on an Iron Man account comes in hand with things like Mysterious Balls, Fossils, and then leppa berries. If you are consistent and you farm leppa berries every single day, you can get about 10,000 leppas a month. And ideally, you probably want about 30,000 leppas for Shiny War. So if you farm every single day, very, very consistently, it'll take about 3 months of leppa berry farming to be prepared for one Shiny War. Which honestly, if you know in advance, is weirdly not that bad. But you're also going to have to do a ton of gym rerunning to get all the Pokeyen you'll need for all the harvesters. And then you'll have to do the amulet coin farming to do all of those gym reruns. It becomes a whole process. But for those who are willing to go through with that process, I'm sure that you will taste insane elements of glory. Or at least I hope you do, because no Iron Man's actually done Shiny War at the time of recording, and I'll be doing it for the first time upcoming in the next 1 month or so. So wish me luck. I hope I get tons of shinies. Or all of my months of prep won't be worth it and it'll be extremely painful. But hey man, it's the journey that counts, right guys? On a serious note though, I'm sure I'll be proud either way because I have worked extremely hard to prepare for this event. Whether I get shinies or not, I hope that I just show what I'm capable of and put as many hours into the game as possible and show people that Petrowski can still grind. Even though I'm total unk status and I'm now 28 years old. Now, I berry farm in a decently unique way comparatively to a lot of other players, so this next tip actually comes from Iron Michael Tyson, so a massive shout out to him. Tip number 37 is that if you want to farm leppa berries every single day, you can divide the patches by 6. What that means is you can do 2 patches of leppa berries, 2 patches of cherry berries, 1 rost, and 1 pecha. And if you just continue to do that cycle of dividing them by 6, you should be able to do a little bit of leppa farming every single day. So a huge shout out to Iron Michael Tyson for that tip. Tip number 38 is more of a mental one than a physical one, but that doesn't make it any less important. Tip number 38 is that scuffed progress is still good progress, especially on an Ironman account. Do it scuffed. Don't have a full Jimmy Run team? Who cares? Do it scuffed. Can't properly farm berries every single day or do all your patches? Who cares? Do it scuffed. It will still be good progress. Playing an Ironman account is inherently inefficient. We're literally setting up an arbitrary challenge that doesn't exist within the game itself. So everything, every little bit of progress becomes efficient when you're playing an account that is inherently inefficient. Now, tip number 39, I'm not going to lie, is one that breaks my heart just a little bit. And it's that sometimes it's actually going to be worth it to release 1x31 Pokemon. Yes, I know. That sounds crazy because it's such a cool and fun thing to do on an Ironman account is collect all these breeders and all these Pokemon with 1x31s and all these cool stats. But one of the biggest things that I find is once you reach the mid to late game, your box space is just so important and you end up with so many 1x31, specifically special attack Pokemon in egg groups that don't really need them. Like things like field egg groups or even 1x31 attack, to be fair, chaos egg groups. You just run out of Pokemon to actually breed them with and to create 5x31s of. So if you end up with a bunch of 31 special attack field egg group Pokemon, like a bunch of them, it's good to keep some. Like obviously Typhlosion is a special attacking field egg group Pokemon, and there are a few more out there, like don't get me wrong, but like things like Eevee, right? So like there are breeders, but sometimes you just end up with so many random little fellas or even mixed attack IV breeders, and you've got to clear some PC space that it ends up being ideal to release them. Or things like female only species. You only need 1 good Kangaskhan or like 1 good Lilligant on your entire account. Those are female only species. You don't need multiple of them. They are not real breeders. That sounded so harsh. Apologies, Kangaskhan and, you know, Miltank and all those Pokemon. But yeah, they're just not useful to us Iron Man in the long run. Now, a quick tip is with something like the Yamask, which is a Chaos egg group breeder. Yamask. Now, Yamask is a Chaos egg group breeder, and you can get a bunch of like 1x31 attack Chaos egg group Pokemon, and you don't really need that many 1x31 attack Chaos IV Pokemon. However, Yamask is in both the Mineral and Chaos egg group, so sometimes it's nice to actually breed physical stats onto a Pokemon like Yamask, and then use those to breed them over to things like Steelix or Golem or Mineral Pokemon that actually do need that physical attack stat. So you can abuse the like transferring across egg group strategy. Whismur is another example, which Whismur is field and monster egg group, but there's also not many monster egg group Pokemon that need special attack. But at a certain point, sometimes it becomes more trouble to go catch some new breeders, and it's just worth to just release them. It's a painful point, but definitely one worth acknowledging and expecting in the future. Next up, tip number 41, a fun one that I've only really started to make sure I don't make this mistake recently, is never breed two 1x31 Pokemon of that are genderless together. So for example, I have this Rotom right here that is 1x31 in special attack. I would never want to breed this with another Rotom that is also 1x31, because the time it would take to catch a 1x31 Rotom at a 5% spawn in the wild is going to be a pain in the butt versus just farming Dittos. What you can do is farm yourself a 1x31 Ditto, pair it with this Rotom, create a 2x31 Rotom, and then do the same with another 1x31 Rotom in a Ditto, and then pair the two 2x31 Rotoms together. I know that sounds kind of confusing, but the general TLDR is that you always want to make Pokemon like Rotom, Beldum, and any other powerful genderless Pokemon at least 2x31 and pair them with a Ditto first, and then breed them with their same species later on, because getting 2x31 Dittos is where things start to become difficult. But having multiple Rotoms, Beldums, and Porygons, or even Magnetons and Starmies is more valuable than just consolidating them often. Think about it like this. To get a 5x31 Rotom, for example, you're going to need two 4x31 Rotoms. Or you would need a 4x31 Rotom and a 4x31 Ditto. Do you know what the odds of catching a 4x31 Ditto are? It's about 1 in 74,000 if my memory is correct. For some reason, I actually remembered that correctly. My memory is not very good, but yeah, the odds of catching a 4x31 Pokemon is 1 in 74,488, and you cannot breed up Dittos the way you can a Rotom. Next up, on to tip number 41. Double check your bag every so often and maybe take the time to go ahead and sell off extra items like nuggets, pearls. There are also things like star pieces and comet shards. It's hilarious that I'm showing you every example in my bag because I haven't double checked my bag in quite a while. These are a bunch of random items that just stock up randomly over time while you play PokeMMO, and they offer a bunch of extra free Pokeyen. Comet shards sell for about 12,000 Pokeyen. These star pieces, it's 50,000 Pokeyen just sitting there that I haven't claimed. So do as I say and not as I do, and go ahead and sell off your extra items and get yourself that extra Pokeyen. Next up, tip number 42 is to be very careful with your Gracidua flowers. If you are ever even lucky enough to go ahead and get them, you only get 25 Graciduas a year, and you can plant them to grow more of them, just like berries, but if you plant them all and make a mistake and they die, you will have to wait a full year to get 25 more of them, and that is your only way on your account to get nature herbs, which is the only way to make your legendary Pokemon properly usable. This makes the Lunar New Year event and the Shaman Raid one of the most important things to do on an Ironman account. What I strongly recommend doing is only planting half of your Graciduas at a time, so if you do happen to make a mistake and the batch fails and dies, you have some extra just in case. I may or may not have learned this the hard way and lost some Graciduas on my Ironman account. And that's the beauty of a video like this, is that I can help you guys dodge the mistakes that I made and learn from them without having to make them yourself. Tip number 43 is a really important one that I recommend doing, especially if you want to legendary hunt within Johto. You can farm lucky eggs passively while Johto legendary hunting, and lucky eggs are going to save you 1 hour of your life, 1 hour of time every single time that you XP train. It is a massive benefit, and they are super, super powerful. You can pop some lures and then run back and forth with a Frisk Thief Pokemon in the front of your party whenever you are legendary hunting, and you have a chance to run into Chanseys over here. And then every time you run into a Chansey and you get a Frisk, you can go ahead and hit Thief. You can Frisk whatever other Pokemon you want to here, like that Ditto if you wanted to, but it probably tastes like a metal powder. Probably not worth it from my experience. You're really looking out for those Chanseys. Or if you don't want to lead with a Frisk Pokemon, you can absolutely just lead with a Swarm Pokemon. I think that's what I did, honestly. A Swarm Pokemon, get a 10% encounter boost, and then just give that Swarm Pokemon Thief. You run into Chanseys so rarely that you don't really need the Frisk. You can honestly just Thief every single Chansey that you run into and make sure your Pokemon has no item onto it, because you really want to grab that lucky egg if you happen to get one. I think I used a Beedrill, for example. So like a Beedrill over at this spot with the Swarm ability to increase your encounters and have the Thief move. Honestly, grabbing a Frisk Thief Pokemon is probably not recommended for this. I just kind of grabbed this because it's been a long time since I've actually done this activity. I'm only missing one legendary right now on the Ironman account, and it is Suicune, so I will come back to the spot in the future. This is also a fantastic shiny hunting location, as I've gotten a shiny Ditto over at this spot. Potentially 2 shiny Dittos here. Wait a minute, were both of these caught over at this location? It's been a long time since I've been over at this spot, but yeah, I might have gotten both of my shiny Dittos over here, honestly. I don't fully remember. But you can also get things like shiny Farfetch, shiny Miltank, and shiny Chansey, of course. You honestly can even catch Dittos if you want to passively while legendary hunting, but it's going to drastically slow down your legendary hunt. And then on top of it, you do need to make sure that you have 15 Dittos caught in a row, so you can use repeat balls in the daytime over here. You either want to start Ditto hunting at nighttime so that you can use dust balls and then catch 15 of them in a row, switch to repeat balls, or just make sure you start in the Hoenn location first and then come over here to spam repeat balls. Next up, a tip you don't really hear anybody talk about, tip number 44, is to abuse the daycare if you can afford it. Now, I'm not talking about breeding. I'm actually talking about storing your Pokemon. This can, number 1, save you box space, but number 2, get you lots of passive experience that you don't have to actively hunt for. It is going to cost you some Pokeyen, obviously, to pull the Pokemon out of here, but if I were to put these level 81 Minons and Plusles in here and pull them out at level 100, paying 19k to level these from level 81 to 100k, or level 100 is so unbelievably worth it. Usually level 80, I think, is around that point where you want to go ahead and throw in a bunch of Pokemon, which is honestly perfect because usually I recommend people level their raid Pokemon up to level 80, but some raids need level 100 Pokemon. I say level up to 80, and that will usually take care of most raids, but some raids need that extra emergency level up, and you can have XP candies for that, or you can get the extra 20 levels from all those level 80 raid Pokemon passively in the daycare. Now, the way the daycare works, I have a full video guide explaining this. If you want, it should be on my channel, but the way it works is you do have to gain experience in the region. Johto is a great region because it has the best XP training spot in the game over at Mount Silver, so putting Pokemon in the daycare here will be a really good shot of you earning some passive experience. And for myself personally, I'm actually about to go abuse the hell out of this and finally take the time to put a bunch of Pokemon in here heading into Shiny War. I'm going to save myself an extra like 10 box spaces, which may not sound like a lot, and it kind of isn't, but it also really is. Heading into something like Shiny War, that's 10 more egg spots, 10 more fossils I can pop without having to release things. Tip number 45 is that I strongly recommend you labeling event Pokemon, especially event Pokemon that have unique hidden ability access, things like this Moxie Gyarados. Just number 1, labeling them with the giant event text as their nickname, or marking them with these little symbols down here in PokeMMO. A lot of people don't utilize these, but I try to utilize these on the Ironman account as a way to mark when a Pokemon is special or has special attributes. Not every Pokemon that I have that's an event Pokemon is labeled event, but I try to always have those little symbols ticked up on them so I remember that it came from something unique or special. You usually do have like the like met in a raid battle if it is a raid Pokemon, so that's another way to double check, but sometimes you don't always have that, especially if you rebreed them, or it'll say something like a fateful encounter as well for certain like specific things. I can go to my Articuno, for example, that Alpha Articuno I've showed off a few times. Let's see what that one says. This one's probably, yeah, a raid battle. So raid battle in a fateful encounter. It all depends. Everything's a little bit different. However you want to label them is up to you, but I strongly recommend labeling event-specific Pokemon because usually you only get one of them per year. And there are so many event-specific Pokemon, it's really easy to forget. Like, for example, this Alpha Delibird that I have, I think, yeah, Delibird Egg, you only get one of those. Like, that's a very weird, like, who really needs Alpha Delibird? Is it that important? I'm not totally sure, but it's a cool one to keep. Are some weird ones like this. I mean, Alpha Raichu, if you want yourself an Alpha Pikachu, like, and having hidden ability access, like, that can be, like, Lightning Rod Pikachu can be relevant. I don't know if there are wild Raichu spawns. I thought there might have been for a little bit, but I don't know if there are. This might be one of the only ways to actually get that alpha. Just being better safe than sorry with your limited event Pokemon is really important and recommended. Next up, tip number 46 is kind of a funny one because I can't really show you physically, but it's to set multiple alarms on your phone or on whatever device you use when you berry farm. I usually set 3 alarms per each time I water or harvest, just in case I snooze or delay my alarms if I'm in the middle of something IRL. This tip actually comes from my wife because she's a big fan of snoozing her alarms when she wakes up. No shade, love her so much, but it's helped me. It's helped me actually berry farm better. Tip number 47 is to start rebattling trainers and doing trainer reruns and rich trainers as soon as possible. Even if you don't have amulet coins or cloister or articuno or whatever you may think you need for a traditional run, just still go ahead and use the link in the description for the trainer rerun guide and just follow the route and defeat some trainers. I'm going to use my HM Dragonite to show you guys what I mean, and only my HM Dragonite, as my other Pokemon in my party has no damaging moves. This run is going to be decently scuffed. It's going to take multiple attacks to sometimes kill these Pokemon, and my Dragonite might also get frozen. Okay, that's... the Petrowski luck in this episode is definitely going to be strong. Okay, maybe bring more than one Pokemon, but my point still stands, I promise you. If that Swanna didn't freeze me, this would have been a cakewalk. Most trainers' Pokemon are much lower level than level 100, so if you just grab a few random Dragonites, Garchomps, or just whatever high-level Pokemon you have lying around and go refight them, you're still going to make some decent pure Pokeyen in the early to mid-game, and it's really hard to make Pokeyen in the early to mid-game on an Ironman account, and this kind of goes along with the do-it-scuffed style of strategy. It is still good progress to do a stuffed trainer rerun like this on an Ironman account. I was able to make an easy like 5,000 Pokeyen, I think, from this. Yeah, 5,000 Pokeyen for just coming over and battling her. That is going to be like 10 to 11 payday pickup fights and definitely take a lot longer. And speaking of payday pickup, tip number 48 is that payday and pickupping with the Meowth is even more viable on an Ironman account than a main account. Getting some pure Pokeyen and even free Pokeballs and other items while farming for things like roaming legendaries or single encounter shunting can be really nice in the early to mid game, or even a great brain dead activity to do really chill and really like semi AFK in the background at endgame. 500 Pokeyen per pickup over at tons of locations like Five Island Meadow in Kanto or tons of other locations. I have tons of videos covering payday pickup spots on my channel, as well as that Route 47 spot we covered over in Johto, while even looking for you can even use the Meowth and payday pickup over there, and then thief any Chanseys, farm lucky eggs, payday pickup, and legendary hunts all at the same time. I also did this over in Pattern Bush, and sometimes you can get items like leftovers when doing payday pickup over there. You get about 60,000 pure Pokeyen per hour when payday pickupping at high-level locations, and you'll often get items you can sell for more Pokeyen. You probably average about 100k Pokeyen per hour on a main account. On an Ironman account. On a main account, you'll make about 120k an hour if you're playing efficiently. It should be a little bit more, but 100k an hour passively is really, really solid on an Iron. Now, tip number 49 is to always keep at least some amount of repels, potions, and escape ropes on you to be able to get out of tight binds on the Ironman account, especially escape ropes. These items can sometimes be the difference of whether or not you're able to make it to an important alpha spawn if you're running out of time, or a Pheno or a Swarm. Tip number 50 is that it is generally advised and worth it to release all gift Pokemon on your Ironman account. Now, if you don't know, gift Pokemon are Pokemon that have the little gift badge, and they are usually things like your starter Pokemon, and they have neutral nature, and then 15 IVs across, and you get them from many different parts of the storyline, not just your starter. But, I mean, I couldn't even bring myself to release my first starter on the Ironman account, so there are still some stipulations and exceptions, but these Pokemon just aren't very valuable, and your box space is valuable. If you don't need as much box space as I do for something like Shiny Wars, there is no need to rush it, but it's definitely something that's worth cutting in the late game. I honestly mostly recommend to rip the band-aid off sooner rather than later, and just releasing a lot of those Pokemon pretty early on, but once again, even I kept one. Next up, tip number 51 is that farming the battle tower is a very viable strategy for getting some decent battle points in the mid-game. Battle points are an extremely important currency on an Ironman account that are used for all sorts of different items like choice bands, toxic orbs, and even consumable items that we use for making things like PP maxes, like those white herbs. Or things like focus sashes. Usually cheap consumables on a main account cost an Ironman about 100 BP per one. I always try to save myself some extra battle points on the account just in case, because you need them in a pinch sometimes. You can even use extra battle points to buy things like breeding braces and save yourself some extra Pokeyen in the mid game, but I generally recommend to avoid that if possible. It's more of a late game thing if you have a ton of extra BP, as BP is harder to get than Pokeyen most of the time. And that leads me into tip number 52, which is to always keep around 10,000 BP on you as an emergency blanket in case you need a special item or a special move to be learned. If you don't know, there are certain moves that can only be learned with battle points within PokeMMO, and they're usually under the special section. A good example is Fly on something like Pikachu. A lot of people want to make a utility Pikachu, and you often need Fly to properly do it. That's going to require some battle points. I thought there was some other way to learn Extreme Speed on Pikachu, but it also looks like Extreme Speed is a BP move as well. If I'm missing something, let me know, but that is a really powerful move on a PvP Pikachu. Don't sleep on the battle point shops over in Hoenn, Unova, or Kanto. They are crucial for cool items and resources, and always keep that stockpile on you at least a little bit. Now, tip number 53 is that the Ho-Oh Refight is a very cheap and manageable team for people to be able to build, and you can go ahead and do it once a week for 3 free legendary lures, which will passively help your legendary hunts, as well as give you some nice increased encounter rates and extra little fun things like an 8% chance to encounter lore exclusive species as opposed to a 5% chance. Now, these are really just a for fun item for the most part, but it's pretty chill and easy to go ahead and do this. I think this is a fantastically fun option to do on the Ironman account. It's not necessarily the most efficient thing, but I think it's really cool. And once again, it kind of goes back to since the account is inherently inefficient, this is a perfect challenge, and like everything's efficient if it's all inefficient, if that kind of makes sense. Now, I don't have a Ho-Oh guides. This is a perfect example, an excuse to go ahead and shout out Jinxed Boone, who his guide will be linked in the description. That is how I was able to learn this strategy. So a massive shout out to him, and it's always a really cool thing to still be learning new things in PokeMMO 13 years in from other players who are exploring other elements and parts of the game. So once again, a massive shout out to Jinxed Boone. His guide on this strategy will be linked in the description, and it's very simple and very easy to follow. He has the video guide as well as the Google Doc if you prefer a text guide. You only need 3 Pokemon for this, and as you can see, the stats are not anything special. You don't need anything crazy here. It's very viable. Even the items, Spell Tag and Hardstone. Then I believe you do go ahead and also throw on an Expert Belt onto your Rotom Heat. But once again, all of these items are very achievable and very cheap, as well as the team. Tip number 54 is that using happiness to evolve certain Pokemon is super annoying and more expensive on an Ironman account. Pokemon like Pichu or other things like Happiny, or a really popular one being Riolu into Lucario. You're going to need to gain happiness on a bunch of Pokemon to be able to evolve them, or on an Ironman account, sometimes evolve them to be able to use them as breeders and reuse their resources. Something you can do to save yourself a bit of a pain in the butt is by heading over to Daisy, Oak's sister, every single day, once every IRL day. If you talk to her and show her a Pokemon like this Charmander that I'm using as an example, even though it doesn't really need happiness, it's just the example Pokemon today, she will groom a Pokemon. This is over in Kanto in Pallet Town, and you can watch its happiness go from 19% up to 49% for free. This is a massive tool and has saved me so much time and energy when evolving happiness Pokemon. Next up, tip number 55 is to keep vitamins for emergencies. All of your HP ups, your proteins, your zincs, your calciums, whatever it may be, you want to go ahead and keep these and hold on to these for emergencies. Once again, re-EVing on the fly for things like PBM or PvP, if needed for specific raids, is super, super crucial. Even the feathers can affect EVs a little bit, so it's nice to go ahead and have these on hand. Don't be lazy and use vitamins for free EVs. It only takes around 30 minutes to EV train a Pokemon, but vitamins are only buyable with BP or usually gotten passively via the storyline. You might be able to buy them with Pokeyen at certain locations, but they are very, very expensive, and you can't always get all of them, I believe. But I really don't recommend buying vitamins, as it's super not worth it Pokeyen-wise. EV training, once again, is super fast. And we are really reaching a lot of the end game tips here. Tip number 56 is going to be to make sure you save Alpha Dittos for very important breeds. Things like this Gyarados, this male Gyarados, which I got from the event, right? I want to keep it an alpha. I have to breed it with an Alpha Ditto and then make it a female to be able to rebreed it again in the future. Alpha Dittos are liquid diamonds on your Ironman account. They are probably the most valuable Pokemon resource you can get. But to be totally honest with you, there is a valid argument for you don't really need to keep a lot of these Pokemon alpha if you don't want to. There's not really a huge pragmatic purpose to it. They already have the hidden ability access. So if you were to just go ahead and breed them down into non-alphas and just use the stats, that would also be totally valid and a very utilitarian way to go about it. However, as many Iron Men like I do, I like to collect things. I like to go ahead and keep the prestigious element of that red glow and big sprite. Why do I value that and like that so much? I don't know, man. They're big. But there's a good chance that a lot of your event alpha Pokemon come out male. So hold on to your alpha dittos for things like Moldbreaker Excadrill breeds, plus Ampharos, Speed Boost Scolipede, Moxie Gyarados, Regenrator Tangrowth, and the list goes on and on. Tip number 59 is to complete your Pokedex ASAP, just like on a main account, but honestly, it's even more valuable on an Ironman account. Having Mount Silver unlocked gives you access to the best XP training spots in the entire game, many of the best EV training spots, the red refight for some of the best Pokeyen in the entire game, although I will say that fight is very difficult and requires a lot of specific Pokemon that will be extremely time consuming and difficult to achieve on an Ironman. It's actually a fight that even I don't do because I don't have the resources yet, and I have over 2,000 hours on my account. Shout out to Frisco for that sub, by the way. Mount Silver offers you the best shiny hunting spot in the entire game for Tyranitar by far. It will be a difficult hunt because you do need a bunch of leppa berries for that, but it will be well worth it when you finally get that purple Pupitar, which I'm sure all of you will keep it as because that is actually secretly the best version of that shiny line, even though everybody usually evolves it into a Larvitar or a Tyranitar, and I can't show you many examples because there's so few on the GTL. Here you go. And you also get an Alpha Tyranitar spawn, one static Alpha T-Tar spawn, which is your best chance at getting a good Tyranitar on your account. And it's kind of become a known trend that creating a really good Alpha Tyranitar is kind of a sign of an endgame Iron Man. And it's really become a status symbol to have a beautiful 6x31 neutral, not neutral nature, but like mixed attacking nature Tyranitar. You can also just go full physical. That is absolutely okay. But I'm really happy I have this naughty 6x31 one. Tip number 60 is to go ahead and get one of almost every single synchronized nature Pokemon early on. Catch events are crucial, so boosting your odds of winning them in the right events is even more crucial. And don't be afraid to use quick balls and nest balls during catch events if you can afford them. Once again, spending Pokeyen for an increased chance of winning reward points is generally worth it since reward points are the most valuable resource on the account. And unless you're berry farming or doing a ton of breeding, you can only spend your Pokeyen on so many things. It really depends on your gameplay style. Sometimes it's almost impossible or it feels impossible to have enough Pokeyen, but sometimes you're flushed with it. Okay, to be fair, I don't know if I've ever felt like I was flushed with Pokeyen on the Ironman account, but you get my point. Go ahead and get yourself a bunch of synchronized Pokemon. They're really good for events, especially when combined with Nest Ball or Quick Ball strategies. People ask me all the time why I have so many Kadabras, and it's also really good to go ahead and EV train as many of them as possible in 252 speed to help them run away from fights. Kadabra is thankfully a pretty fast Pokemon, so even if it's lower level, with 252 speed EVs, it can make it out of most wild battles. But worst case scenario, if you're having trouble running away from a fight, you can always put a Choice Scarf or a Smoke Ball on them. Choice Scarf is better since Smoke Ball does add a little bit of extra text, which will slow down your encounters just a little bit. Now, for tip number 61, I'm scared to even show you guys this and click this as an example, and I'm honestly not going to. I'm so sorry. But I have a video covering this. It's Prismatic Pearls Explained. And tip number 61 is really that shinies end up having a pragmatic purpose on an Ironman account. They can be consumed, if you are so willing, for Prismatic Pearls. And sometimes, even if you're not willing, you might need them if you want to achieve certain things. It's pretty rare you might want to do this, but maybe after getting like 3 shiny Tentacruels, you wouldn't mind turning one of them in for an item that could transfer hidden ability access from your Alpha Golurk over onto your shiny Golurk, for example. This is actually the only way to get hidden ability access on most shinies within PokeMMO. Unless you just breed a Shalfa, but obviously if you do that, get a lottery ticket. I don't know if there's even a Shalfa Pokemon that exists on an Ironman account right now. I know that there was one Sharpedo at one point, but that player was really based and honest and was like, you know what? I kind of was playing an Ironman account, but I was kind of being casual about it. And he admitted that he bought some stuff off the GTL. So he was like, you know what? I'm revoking my own Ironman status. I don't want this to stand as the first Ironman Shalfa, which was incredibly based of him. He could have just lied, and we honestly never would have known. So shout out to that gamer. I'll never forget you. But there might have been like maybe one other Shalfa on an Ironman post that potentially. Maybe there's one out there, but it's very, very, very rare. So most people are going to have to go with the prismatic pearl route, which is going to require you talking to this rich guy over here. Yeah, you can explain him and talk to him a little bit or whatever. He's over here in Celadon City. I think I have his different locations across different regions as well within PokeMMO in my Prismatic Pearls Explained Guide. And to carry on from that, tip number 62, we're almost done, fellas. Duplicate shinies in general are honestly just worth more on an Ironman account. Not only because of the Prismatic Pearl situation, but also because of breeding. If you ever want a good IV or potentially a 5x31 shiny Pokemon on an Ironman account, on average, you are going to have to catch 16 shinies within the same egg group and with the correct IV placements. Now, you can just take a calculated risk and try to roll some of those IVs randomly, since shiny breeds have better odds with that. And that might actually be worth it on an Ironman account, since the shinies are so rare, which is disgusting to even think about. But it also might not be worth it because shinies are so rare, like I said. It's a tough cookie, and highly statted shinies are one of the most insane flexes on an Ironman account. And the final tip, tip number 63, is a simple yet effective one. It's the fact that Whismur and Spenda end up actually being two of the best Pokemon to farm for breeders within PokeMMO on an Ironman account, because they share two really good egg groups. Spenda is both field and humanoid, and Whismur is both monster and field. All three of these egg groups very powerful, and you can even breed Spendas with Whismurs if you want to transfer certain stats between egg groups. You can farm Spendas really consistently over here at Route 113, which is just east of, I believe, Falabar Town, which is the Ditto Town. And then you can go west in Falabar Town and go over to the Ditto farming location, as I'm sure many of you know, and farm Whismurs there while farming Dittos if you really want to. They're also super easy to catch. You can go ahead and quick ball these or nest ball these probably if you want to, or you can just go ahead and false swipe into one quick Pokeball, and I believe it's probably going to be a 100% catch rate. You can also just dodge the females if you only want male breeders, or maybe you have a ton of males and need more females. You can pick and choose, of course. And if you catch a bunch of garbage and you're trying to maintain your PC space, you can go ahead and release things while you catch them. If you do enough catch events and catch a bunch of Dittos, you might never need to do this, but catching Spendas and Whismur is much faster than farming Dittos. So if you need these two or these three egg groups, they're definitely good spots to know about. And that is it, man. The 63rd tip on the Ironman account that I spent over 2,000 hours learning about and gaining the knowledge for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it was helpful. I hope that my mistakes and my thought process and my learning of the account can save you guys a little bit of time, stress, and hassle. I hope that you enjoy the Ironman account just 10% as much as I have, because then you'll have a pretty damn good time. I also hope that if you found this video helpful, these videos take a lot of time and effort to do, especially when I already upload videos daily. Weaving these massive projects in between is honestly very difficult alongside the daily videos. So if you find these helpful, make sure to always leave them a like or dislike. If you don't, I want your honest feedback. Leave me a comment on how I can improve. Leave me a positive comment on what tip was your favorite. Subscribe for daily PokeMMO videos. I upload almost every single day, and I've been uploading a video every single day for almost 5 years at this point doing PokeMMO content, and it's been an absolute blast. If you want to go above and beyond and support the channel and the content, if my channel has supported your PokeMMO journey enough, if you watch enough hours of entertainment and you can afford it, YouTube memberships, Twitch Primes, Twitch subs, and PayPal and Venmo donations, those two last ones are actually the best way to support and allow me to make as much content as I do and do massive projects and guides like this. But at the end of the day, you can always watch for free. I just hope that my content can help enough people and increase their fun and journey within PokeMMO. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. I will always be Petrowski, and I will see you guys later. But for now, peace, Areno. Yo, what's up? Outro Petrowski here, and I wanted to say thank you so much to everybody's name who is on this list. You really allow me to make the content that I do every single day, and I hope I can make it worth your guys' while and add to your PokeMMO journey. Thanks again so much for watching the entire video, and have a great day.